Good. Having explained this, now we come to the meat of the lecture. What do we do about it? And I want to respond both from the micro and the macro. The micro perspective is you and your family. The macro is the state. The first thing we have to do at the micro level is not to keep our wealth in bogus money, because it's constantly falling in value. So buy gold or silver. If you buy gold and silver, the gold and silver would store the value safely. So if you take out the gold and silver after 5 years, 10 years, it could still buy the camel. If if 1 dinar could buy a sheep at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, then 1,000 years later, 1,500 years later, provided the demand and supply remain constant, 1 dinar could still buy the sheep. So the first thing we do is try to convert whatever wealth we have into dinar and dirham. I found in Indonesia you could have a 1/6 of a dirham, a quarter of a dirham, a 1/3 of a dirham, a half of a dirham, and a dirham in Indonesia. You need that if you want to buy a cup of chai. You don't need a whole dirham. So, the first point we make is, it makes more sense so long as we don't have a market in which we are buying and selling using dirham and dirham, dinar and dirham. It makes more sense to buy gold bars and silver bars rather than gold coins and silver coins. Incredible wisdom of the Prophet ﷺ and the market at that time. What you will do is to buy wheat, rice, barley, sugar. You have to know how to store it so that it does not spoil. So in the story of Yusuf alayhi salam, remember he said, keep the corn on the cob. Because if you keep the corn on the cob, it will have a longer shelf life. This is how the native wisdom, it goes to work on how to preserve food. The time of constantly rising prices. From where does food come? Answer, it comes from two sources. It comes from the land and it comes from the animals. So now you could understand why our Prophet said, sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa sallam, he said, if you have land, hold on to your land. He said, if you have animals, hold on to your animals. So this is not the time to invest all your money. You could buy land in Azad Kashmir. He said the time will come when a believer, in order to preserve his faith, would have to flee to the mountainsides and to places where rain falls and take with him some sheep and goats. And so, two things we need for food security. Two things we need for security of money in an age of runaway inflation. You need land and you need animals. And so our Prophet said, Flee to the mountainsides and places where rain falls and take with you some sheep and goats. And he said, if you have land, hold on to your land. If you have animals, hold on to your animals. That the road to get out of this inflation is to bring back dinar and dirham as money. That is the road. Dajjal is going to do it in Israel. That's right, tomorrow. And it will be to the shame and disgrace of this ummah when Israel brings back the sunnah money and we are still eating our biryani and going home and sleep.